Maggie Dent. Here we are. It's
Here
like
we
I'm going to reach through the screen and throw my arms around you in a non-COVID friendly, massive bear hall of a hug. I miss you. I miss your face, and I'm so glad to get to chat to you.
It's such a mutual thing. I was so excited. I think I woke early. I'm obviously in morning time. You're at nighttime. I just wanted it to happen. So, hi.
It's like Christmas in September.
Yeah.
Also, look what showed up in my office last week.
I'm so excited.
It's so good. I feel like my mama self is buried into this book as I think about my own boys and the stage of life that they are in, being 13 and 16 years of age, and the hopes and dreams and wishes that I have for them. And it's like seeing the inner workings of how, that has come together and will continue to come together for them.
Look, it's been just interesting in terms, I wanted it really practical. I'm very practical, and we keep getting messages of both mums and dads who have read parts of the book, particularly the bit about improving your capacity to communicate, who are having these incredibly deep conversations with their boys that they've never had since they went on the bridge to manhood, and how effortlessly it's happening just because they tweaked a few things. And I'm going, yes, so exciting.
And you are so practical, and your practicality is born of an extraordinary sensitivity to the heart. And so the things that you land on, and, whether it's about communication or whatever it is, the reason they work is that they go so directly into heart and soul. And, I know that in your presence, I have never felt so seen and so heard as I do when I'm in a conversation with Maggie Dent. And so I feel like that's what's on these pages, is that kind of a sense, right?
Oh, thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
It's one other little thing the other day. I'll tell a really quick story, because this is kind of, if we change the mindset of how we think we're supposed to be treating teenage tween and teen boys, because we've got a lot of reasons why they behave like they do, the same as we get confused with teen girls, but apparently this young mum of 2 little children was looking out her window, and some teen boys are walking home from school and threw a bottle that hit a lamp pole and shattered glass all over this lawn patch near the road, and just kept walking. Anyway, next minute, she didn't realize her hubby had just ridden his bike home. Now, he has just been listening to a podcast, me explaining boys, jumped on his bike, rode after them and said, "Hey guys, I just noticed you threw that bottle. Can you come and help me pick it up? Because my little girls play out here." And the boys came back with him, and together they picked every shard of glass up. Mm-hmm. And while he was doing that, he said, "Geez, you make some dumb choices, don't you, when you're your age? But you're not bad. And I just need you to know, if you ever want someone to have a chat to or whatever, just drop by, And these boys just thanked him, shook his hand, and when they left, and look at the difference.
Yeah.
And his wife said, "Whoa," she didn't even know. He hadn't even read the book. He only heard it on the radio, on his phone, on the way home.
Incredible.
And he changed his behavior instantly. So that's the gift, I think, that it transfers instantly into changes rather than, oh gosh, what do I have to remember?
Yeah.
We just change the lens.
When it's heart-based common sense, you don't have to remember it.
No.
Because it comes out of us as human beings, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah. I love that.
That makes sense. And of course, a lot of dads are going, whoa, that makes sense of what I did at that age.
Yeah.
And how I was treated and why I have been, wounded by it, because they were coming from the traditional patriarchal system that you just have to be really firm with boys and harsh with them or else they'll never learn. And in actual fact, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah. For their very
hold the heart,
hearts.
They transform and they're so grateful, especially when we can continue to love them. It is that big message I keep saying. Yes, they are going to muck up a lot, and due to high levels of testosterone, a lot of it's going to be physical stuff. Yep, I know, not a good idea to jump off the garage onto the trampoline and see if you can jump over the neighbour's fence. However, in the moment, that seemed like a great idea to have fun and stretch my little warrior. Yes, I did collide with the fence and I may have broken my arm. But what I now need is you to love me, because I can't believe I made such a lousy choice.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. And they're not making lousy choices because they're lousy kids.
No.
They're growing and going in the way that the adolescent boy brain goes and grows. And the problem is, when we make them wrong for being the very ones that they are, we create this divide. And in the absence of any relationship to kind of hold all of the pieces together, then we're in big trouble.
So true. When I explain the brain stuff again, a lot of that, you know, we now have neuroscience to help us, but not only is the flooding of testosterone creating an incredible surge of energy that kind of does want them to do physical things. There's no GABA, you know, that wonderful amino acid that puts the brake on us before puberty and as grown-ups. And when you get that, you have to have more compassion. Yeah. And it's exactly that. When they realize they're not bad. Yeah. There's not something wrong with them. That this is actually a time with, traditionally, if they were still in kinship communities, they would be testing themselves with men, testing those moments, but with a break there that was an adult male to keep an eye on them. So again, we kind of have left, as I kind of explain as the metaphor, the rails have kind of fallen off the bridge a little bit, because we think that they're getting all that information from school, and we're getting that information online, and they don't listen to us as much. But in actual fact, right now in this world, the digital world, where all of these unhealthy influences are accidentally landing on their lap, that's when they need the rails more than ever, whether it's beautiful, loving parents who sometimes want to pull their hair out, or those significant adult allies who I call lighthouses, who every now and then can say something, you know, like, you know, really it would be best if you did wear some deodorant, because, you know, what happens at this stage of puberty is that your sweat glands are really high. Whereas if mum said it, they go, you're just criticizing me. Yeah. So again, it's the collective voice that we need to gather again. I mean, we need it around our girls as well. We talk about aunties and significant women, but girls often talk about these things. They often have conversations about them. They often talk about their big feelings of feeling frightened or sad or scared by something. Whereas, you know, our boys are still being conditioned that those vulnerable feelings, which many are feeling, especially, you know, during a pandemic when their world has been tipped upside down. And also many have been shut indoors, where how do I discharge these surges of testosterone? How do I test myself? How do I connect with my mates, who I often love to punch, bump, jump on as a form of affection? Yeah. How am I getting that cup filled in this crazy world? So, you know, I think it's come, you know, at an interestingly really good time.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking about you today because I was picking my son up from school, his very first day of senior high school, full day.
Oh, I know. Such a big day.
Big day for him. And I got to tell you, big day for me, Maggie. Yeah. So I'm sitting in my car and I'm watching these kids spill out of their first full day of being in the classroom. And this group of boys, knowing I was talking to you today, I'm really watching them, right? And they come tumbling out, and they're all masked up because that's what they have to do at school now. And as soon as they're through the doors, the fists are flying. Yeah. The one friend has the other friend behind the back, and the other friends are pretending to, you know, punch him in the head, and everybody's just, and I was like, wow, it's like they turn it on instantly, you know? Yeah. It's them, and they've just been hanging on by a thread to get out of the school building so they can, you know, be what they're supposed to be.
That window of 13 to 14 is where that comes out the most, where, you know, with the brain pruning, their inability to manage impulses is even worse, but also to say the things they kind of feel, they often, that comes out in action too, doesn't it? So those classrooms, honest to goodness, I love them because, oh my gosh, you did watch them all over each other like a mob of gorillas, but no intention to be disrespectful. I'm sorry, miss. Oh, sorry. And sometimes they just get up and walk around the room, and you go, hey, Maddie, what are you doing walking? You go, I don't know why I'm walking. And of course she'd have two of them. So what I suddenly realized as a teacher of these boys, I think they need more movement than girls. So how about kind of every 20 minutes or so, I built in brain breaks, movement, all sorts of stuff. And guess what? They stopped walking around. So again, we tend to be in our classroom, in our schools in secondary, kind of teaching through the lens of what, of lovely, compliant, well-behaved girls.
Yeah.
Without an understanding, particularly in that window of 13 to 14, that there is exactly like they were probably at 4 and 5, Vanessa, you and I always worry that they get misunderstood then as well, because, they can't sit on the mat and listen to stories for 20 minutes. And when they start shoving and wriggling and squirming, we think they've got ADHD.
Right.
So, it's this understanding. When we see it through the slightly different lens, we can also teach boys ways of activating that dopamine by maybe punching in their hand while they sit still or tapping their foot under the desk. But we've got to help them understand that you're not wrong, that there is a significant difference at times between the way that girls and boys can be patient, sit still and hold those, self-regulate themselves. And when you get it, and I love the teachers who've been teaching them for years who get it. Yeah. There are times we would just kind of look the other way for a moment, because there's no intention for malice, no intention to disrupt the lesson. And then sometimes they would do a fart to entertain their friends. No, they're not deliberately wanting to be gross because they want their friends to laugh, because laughing is a connection. And that kind of joyfulness is how boys talk. They don't say, gee, mate, I really love you. You're one of my best friends and I'm glad you stand up for me. They can't always articulate that.
But a fart takes all of that.
Straight away.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Right. And I think it's Wayne Dyer who said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so when you can see it that way, then don't you just have this like swell of love for them? Like they're just become kind of magical creatures in a way.
Exactly. And one of the things that we really need to recognize is that anxiety and stress for boys often comes out as silliness. Mm-hmm. It often comes out with really, it is walking around the room. It's shoving a chair. It's because it feels awful for them just as well as it does for our girls. But cortisol, again, for what we know I explore in the book, and it made so much sense, is that when a girl or a woman gets upset, the limbic brain fires up, which of course is that center in the brain that goes, whoa, what's going on here? Which we've done a lot of during this pandemic year. And then for girls and women, it's the word center that activates next. Right. So of course we go into, God, this is stupid, and what are you doing that for? And so for boys and men, limbic brain fires up, and then it disappears down into the body. Yeah. And so often that's the kicking and the shoving. Yes. And of course, then we make that wrong. Right. Eventually, he can access his word center, but not in that moment. So how often in the heat of the moment, unaware parents and educators trying to tackle something when he is completely flooded, unable to access anything, let alone a prefrontal cortex. And we wonder why we can't resolve it in that moment. Whereas give them time, walk them out. I love it when I've got teachers that walk them around an oval while they're coming down from a big red moment, because in amongst that, they're just shifting the neurochemicals. Yeah. The boy's getting a sense that, hang on a minute, this person's actually on my side. I can really hear, I feel safe here. And then out comes the words that he knows now can come because my body has discharged all the big feelings.
Do you have a sense, Maggie, from having been around, your 4 boys and also all the boys that you would have taught and worked with over the years, that if they don't get to discharge, and I'm really thinking about this right now for our boys, especially our adolescent boys, because there's so much unknown and so much stress and so much change happening daily, right? That if they don't get to discharge in the ways that are resonant with how they are wired, that there is a cumulative effect of not getting to release that eventually it explodes. Do you see that?
Oh, it's exactly what does happen. And I have worked with boys who have, who've held it in. Held it in because mama said that's just not how you behave, and it really not felt safe. And when they did explode, punching fists through walls. Yeah. Yep. Really violent stuff comes out. And of course, that's when, you know, then they end up in a whole world of trouble without an understanding that in actual fact, that gets past a point. There's no reason for it. Mm-hmm. And indeed, that's what happened. I find with, when I've worked with some men later in life who had a significant loss, death, particularly as a boy or a teen, that were just told to toughen up and just move on and don't talk about it, and weren't allowed to go to the funeral, weren't allowed. And what happens is that's like that ball is just inside, and to keep it down as other things trigger the sadness. And this is exactly what can be happening now, because so many of the things that have been taken away activate the loss and grief that's buried within our boys and men. Later on, they often use more alcohol and drugs to try and numb it.
Yeah.
But often they get very aggressive when they drink.
Because it's
so again, the whole bit, in other words, it does need to come out, and we need to recognize. So those of you who have got, you know, the boys of any age, you've got to find a way to keep them, as I call, get the gunk out of their motor as often as possible. And we had a boxing bag for a while, but we were just endlessly out. I have a basketball hoop. We were endlessly out shooting hoops, sometimes at 10 o'clock at night, because it kind of discharged it as well. So just always think of big, ugly feelings with boys, particularly as energy. Energy that does need dissipation. You can't, you know, there are some times that our boys eat to try and shift it, but unfortunately, yes, it will shift it temporarily, but it will still be there. And you can see why they love to escape into gaming.
Oh yeah.
Or even, you know, music or something online, because it creates a different neurochemical. But what we know is whatever that wound is that isn't given light, it just keeps building. Yep. And what they do need,
given light.
Yeah, it needs the light. And that's, again, it's those, you know, if only we can let them. And I think I explore that a lot. One of the key messages in the books is that what we have to work with our boys to change the old patriarchal system is that failure, is something we can help each other through. That you are not a failure, you are not bad, you are not damaged. Everybody fails. And I think this pandemic, if anything, is a great lesson to watch us as parents struggle. Right. You know, we're struggling with uncertainty. We're struggling with lost jobs. We're struggling with, well, look at me. I won't be on the road forever. So it's so funny because that was 80% of my income.
Right. And your life, right? Like your life was being out in the world that way.
Totally.
Different. Yeah.
And guess what? I've had those conversations with my own sons, questioning. And so, Mum, how are you going to go? And I had these really, they are mature men now, but they can still be, trust me, there's still a 4-year-old inside them. But because we've always had conversations that mucking up was never something to be ashamed of. Mucking up was called living and life, and that it's about recovery. So if there's any message out there I want you to take is that we're looking at recovering from this, and we are, as humans, biologically wired to recover, even though we're not certain when. Can you imagine being in the midst of, you know, World War I, World War II, no idea when it was going to finish? Same sort of thing. We know, and I come from that generation, my grandfather and my father. So I guess a part of me always knows, I know as a resilience educator, we will get through this. And that at times I need to focus on what I'm going to do after, because at the moment I can't see 2 special granddaughters who are on the other side of Australia because the borders are closed. I know I am. So I focus on those days I get sad with the things we're going to do when we get there. And that's another thing families can do as a collective, have family meetings about what we are going to do when everything is back into freedom. What's something really special we can do as a family? And let's start planning it so that you can create a big vision board so that, you know, if it would be my boys, they'd look at every beach to go surfing at, whereas I'm looking at gardens. Bit of a mismatch. And my husband would be looking at football games. So can you see again? But let's start feeding like the dream space that takes us out of being stuck, because, you know, we're only as powerless as our mind keeps us at some point. And that we, you know, and that's the other thing about helping others and thinking of others. We know that takes us out of feeling powerless. And I think that's another lesson. I know we've learned that here, that you know, I'm much more everyone's more aware of neighbours and elderly people,
Right.
and I think we needed to come back to we. I think we were
Yeah.
very me focused, and now we're going
Right.
into we.
One of the gifts of COVID-19, right?
Absolutely.
The University of Alberta here in Canada maintains a library of hope, which is it's all peer-reviewed scientific literature looking at what hope is.
Yes.
And I love this idea of focusing on what's coming next, of coming together as the collective and feeling how empowered we can be in the support of all of the people around us. And one of the articles that I read out of this Library of Hope was talking about the instantaneous change in brain chemistry that comes with that emotion, that feeling of hope coming up from inside of you, and that it tips you over into all of the happy chemicals, and really does leave you to feel better. Focusing on hope and focusing on community, if you were to bring it back to adolescent boys,
Yep.
boys who are becoming men, and we've had other world situations, the world wars that you mentioned, there's been other, pandemic types of situations. Our boys right now, in a really formative time of their development, are living through history. They will talk to their grandchildren about this time one day. And so if you were to have anything to offer to parents, grandparents, other big people in the land right now for these boys right now, what do we do to get them through this stretch?
Okay, I think it's the bottom of what resilience studies now show us is that we have to do it together, exactly what you said.
Yeah.
So for boys, tween boys, what I do know is if we have conversations with them as well-meaning parents, I want you to make sure that you don't get tempted by alcohol and drugs, and I want you to take care on your skateboard. It just doesn't resonate at all. Guess what does? Watch out for your friends.
Beautiful.
When we empower our boys to watch out for our friends, it also allows us to have those conversations that says, have you noticed any of your friends struggling with, feeling really stressed and trapped? And it'll open up a conversation that you can't get in if you ask them if they are. So it is a huge message to get them through. What we know is, yes, they do need significant parents to fall back on. There's no question. And in the research I found was fascinating, over 1,600 men, who was the most important person who helped you, who got you through being an adolescent boy, which remember can be anywhere from 10 to 30. Right. And nearly 60% said their mum.
Yeah.
So we need to recognize that significant caring, you need somebody who you can fall back on. Doesn't matter who it is. If it can't be a parent, we need a significant person.
Yeah.
But what we need that to be, we can empower our tweens to watch out for their friends and also to have a voice when they're concerned. And I know that, be the guardian, be the secret guardian of your bunch of friends. Check in with them, double check on them. If there's something they've put up on the socials that is a bit, makes you feel not okay, then you need to be a voice that says, I'm not comfortable with this. I need to talk to someone else, because we know that they can also make impulsive, poor decisions around self-harm. Yes. So again, when we give them the tools to recognize the flags that need us to be concerned, who's withdrawing, who's not actually joining us while we're doing other stuff online. So again, the big message is two things, is that we are in this together. We are social beings, and everything that strengthens our sense of belonging and connectedness will help us all survive. And the second one underneath that is just to every single grown up, keep shining a light on an invisible sign around every teen, but particularly teen boys, because they're often misunderstood. Make me feel I matter. Even better, show me you love me. So again, at different times, it's grabbing them every now and then and saying, I love you. And they go, man, whatever. But we never stop doing it, because in this window, our deepest hunger is, am I loved as I am? And, they'll have zits. They will be all gangly all over the place. They will forget stuff. I mean, they'll jump in the car to go to school and their backpack is still in the kitchen table.
Only every day.
They lose stuff. They can't remember what day it is. And that's all part of this navigating this tricky window. It does get better, and we have to keep telling him it gets better, but I can still love you even though you're a bit forgetful at the moment. It is that power that is what every human needs, is people who can love us fiercely and unconditionally, especially in that early window of adolescence. And then as we venture out into the big wide world, equally then, because they still are at risk.
I always say to my boys, no matter what, now, forever, and for always, no matter what you ever say, think, or do.
I love it.
That's it.
I love it. No, seriously.
Yeah.
And then if you can't kind of, think it's getting through, write them notes, poke them under their pillow, stick it under their bed, put it on their mirror in their room, put it in their lunchbox. Yeah. No matter what, still love you. And they go,
but it's secretly inside, right? And I see them, my eldest son, who's enormous. He's 6'2", he's 200 pounds, he has giant feet, he's hairy, he smells. He's at times incredibly wise. And so I see him shifting into this being who's so caring and so, you were talking about on the lookout for his friends, and he's really, starting to shine as that kid. And on the weekend, he's been doing a course by correspondence, which he's meant to have worked on all summer long, being that summer's just ended here. And so he had this kind of giant, on the weekend where he realized he has to get, 6 months of lessons done in the next 3 weeks. And he had this panic. And I saw him before my eyes go from this wise, capable kid to being 4 years old.
Yeah.
I don't know where this thing is, and I don't know what we're doing, and I'm never going to get it done. And he just was, and I think that's sort of the shape shifting of adolescence. They're, on the one hand, they've got this arm kind of stretching back into the yearning of wanting to be held in that nest of childhood, while they simultaneously have another arm, reaching forward into all that's on the horizon. And it just has to feel like so as a parent, to be there to kind of pick up the pieces and to not react at the 5-year-old boy, but to love on him and hold him up while he kind of gets himself sorted out and finds his way forward again.
That is so true. And in so many ways, so many of the behaviors, particularly early puberty, up to 13, 14 in that window, is so much like the 4-year-old, except on steroids. You'll have that, and I know that I get messages from so many mums saying, I think an alien stole my child. I had this child I could talk to. I can't now. And he's grumpy and moody and disrespectful. And I'm like, oh my God, I want my son back. And you've got both ends. You've got the one that might likely steal yours. And then you've got the one now coming back, even though he didn't disappear as much. But I keep saying, hold in there. You're going to see these moments of incredibly, the boy that is actually in there, all the good you put in there is going to come back out, but it takes a while and it comes out in little bits.
Yeah.
Let me give you one example of how hilarious my beautiful sons are. So I was doing a seminar, and I've already talked to them about, that your prefrontal is not really as fully developed, and you can, you make really poor choices. And so my baby at the time was 19, nearly 20, and he was sharing a flat in the city so I live in 2 parts of Australia. And he said, Mum, I don't buy that bit about the prefrontal lobe and, saying it doesn't develop till the mid-20s. Because look at me, I'm doing physiotherapy, I'm studying, I'm healthy, I haven't had an accident in my car, I'm doing really well. And he took a bottle of ginger beer, was his favourite drink, and he just shook it and took the lid off while he's talking to me. And it just fizzed everywhere on the wall, it fizzed on me and it fizzed on him, and he went, okay, maybe some part of it isn't developed. Like, it was just a really benign, ridiculous thing to do. And here he is having this, conversation with how incredibly good his prefrontal was.
That's right. Just like that.
And then we cleaned it up together laughing.
Right. And you probably still have a laugh about it even now.
Absolutely. And that is exactly the place we want to get to, don't we?
That's right.
And one of the other challenges, I think, for parents is we really want to make them not make our decision, our poor choices, and not struggle what we did. But we have a tendency, you know, as you know, that sometimes our trickiest things as adolescents will suddenly appear in front of us in one of our children. And so it's not always about them, is it, Vanessa? Sometimes it's also about us. So I was doing a lot of work on me at that time, which I think helped me be the parent they needed to be, allowing them to be them and me to be me, not me in and amongst that all.
You to be them. Yeah. And it gets all kind of enmeshed, right? I've always sort of said that we're all the ages we've ever been. And so I still have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 9-year-old and a 16-year-old inside of me. And, you know, I think that on a sort of felt level, I could make sense of that when my boys were very young. I feel like now that they're in adolescence, perhaps because my memories of my own adolescence are so much more crystallized and concrete, that I am almost going through a second adolescence as I watch my boys go through theirs. You know, I have to check in very regularly to make sense of, okay, what's going on in there, so that I can make sure they're getting a giant invitation to be exactly who they are, that does not get contaminated by my, you know, needs, in terms of surrounding, swooping in with too much protection, not enough, you know, whatever it is, that they just get to be.
I think the other really key aspect that I'd love every parent of every teen, both girls and boys, is that often around their spontaneous behavior is very little intentionality. They do not plan to get out of bed and be grumpy, moody, disrespectful, or forgetful. We really need to keep this. It's like developmentally, we recognize that toddlers can be hard work, and there's developmental drivers around it. And that's a really big message. And that's why they need that compassion, because every now and then they're going to make a poor choice in the heat of the moment around a friend or at school. And when they get dealt with in whatever way comes up for them, when they come home, you know, what they don't need is to get it again. Because what we know is the inner critic really gets loud in this window, and they're already attacking themselves.
Right.
So being able to validate for them, gee, it sucks, doesn't it, when we make lousy choices? Can I get you a snack? Are you okay? You know, whatever. And at different times, that's the part that they don't need another dose, because, and we know boys attack themselves just as much as girls in this window. They just hide it behind a bit more effective mask. So know that anytime they muck up, they're already having a go at themselves.
And it's not just one negative voice. Sometimes we talk about it as being the tribunal of holes.
Yeah.
That live
and it loops, and it loops, and it loops, and it loops. So again, nothing like, I used to start baking a lot around exam time, because I found their inner critics are a bit, so they'd walk in the house and everything smelt good. An amazing shift, because a lot of boys, you know, they're perpetually hungry. And sometimes it was actually a slow cooked meal for dinner that I'd have on, whether it was a curry or a roast, because all of that triggered endorphins from childhood that actually were warm and fuzzy. And I didn't have to say a word.
Yeah.
But I was manipulating with great love.
That's right. Anything with great love, right? This morning being the boys' first full day, and they were with their dad over the weekend. And so they woke up this morning at their dad's house, and he heads off to work quite early in the morning. So I had already made arrangements that I would go down and pick them up at 7:30 and bring them back to my house, which is 5 minutes down the road. And I had the scones in the oven before I left, because I knew I wanted them to walk into the house to that smell.
See? You were doing exactly the same as me. Yes.
So let's say this. Let's say I'm a mom or I'm a dad out in the world, and I want to be that parent who shines that light onto my adolescent boy. What do I do?
This is going to sound really a bit crazy. It's make his friends as welcome and love them as much as you can, because again, that's the lens where your son sees himself through that. I know it sounds a bit crazy, because of course I've already told you that you need to love him and tell him you love him and all of that, which I've already ticked off. But what I found was when I really, really loved and welcomed the friends that they had, and some were girls and some were boys, they tended to hang around our house a lot more, which meant they all felt they belonged and there was somewhere safe for them.
Yeah.
And the boys always behave better when their friends are around. But if I wanted to know stuff, I just had to listen in the background and I'd find out everything. So it was a really good way of knowing. And they'd be talking if something was going on at school and you could kind of in the distance get to know it all. You don't have to interrogate your son.
Yeah.
But I think it's also this is their biological need. And this is why it's so challenging at the moment, is hanging out together is what fills their cup of self-worth in so many ways. So look forward to the future of, as I created a downstairs den. So get rid of your cars and turn your carport garage into a place where teens can hang out, particularly boys, because they do, make sure there's nothing breakable down there. I got a pool table, which meant they were forever playing pool, but I could hear the conversation sometimes. Yeah, right. Or a fire pit. Legally do not light it in summer. It's very self-contained according to the fire rules. But I found there were times that camping trips and hanging around a fire kind of was just this incredible memory building thing that life's okay.
Yeah.
So we need to give those opportunities. That would be mine, is and asking, always batting out for your friends, picking them up, dropping them off when you're allowed to, of course. Yeah. In other words, sharing other people's boys' lives actually shows your boys that they all do matter. And there were times the last thing I needed to do, my boys were surfers, Vanessa, as you know, was get out of bed early on the weekend and take a car full of smelly adolescent boys surfing and sit and freeze myself off at the beach for 2 or 3 hours, because that's just not what I wanted to be doing. But what I know is what I saw when those boys got back in the car were boys whose cups were full of life, who were full of natural endorphins and dopamine and appreciation and gratitude. And that's what I wanted to be contributing to. So what are the ways that you can do that for your son? If they're not into surfing, are they into music? Are they into, and I know you do that. You've got space where they can play music, because that's what puts the shine on their face. And, it's that, is there a spark I can help to nurture inside my boys? And every one of them will be a little bit different. But if you can figure out what that is, whoa, you've got it nailed.
That's it. I think between finding those pieces and because you and I have been friends now for several years, so I've been hearing about the lighthouses for a while. And I have to tell you, that's probably one of the best things that I could have done for my boys, was to find those people and to start to position life so that those people would be part of this stretch of the journey, if you will. Yeah, it is everything. It is,
and that's what we did if we were in in an Indigenous tribe.
Right.
We had uncles or aunties who just were automatically there significantly, and they were there all the time. And in actual fact, in traditional Australian Aboriginal culture, it's aunts and uncles who do most of the kind of parenting in adolescence, not mums and dads, because they're busy doing someone else's kids. And guess what? How sensible is that? Because
genius.
Yeah, we push back more on our parents because we're biologically meant to. So there's no question. They are out there, and they don't have to be there every minute of the adolescent life. They're often, and one of the things I found at school, I didn't realize I was a lighthouse for kids I never taught, particularly the kids on the fringe, on the edge, who didn't have any friends. I noticed there was a way I used to walk into the English office from the car park, and gradually over a year, kids I'd said hello to out in the playground at lunch or recess or something kind of started hanging around there just because I would say hello and check in on them and how you doing, or tease them about their football team. And I didn't realize for years later, that's being a lighthouse.
Right. Yeah.
It's not every day that you're checking in. It's every now and then you just shine a bit of light on that little adolescent brain and heart that's going, who am I?
Yeah. Just these gorgeous drops. Right? Of love and connection that flow out from there. Beautiful. Now you, my dearest Maggie, are one of the speakers at the Parenting.
I am so excited.
for second year going, which we are so excited about. And you're going to be talking about some of these very things at the summit. That's going live the 25th or the 26th. If you're in Australia, it's the 26th. And then the 27th, the people get access to you. Direct access to the one and only Maggie Dent and our whole panel of speakers, Christy Goodwin, who we love. Yeah, we're going to make her hold her shoes up, though, when she's on the channel. I mean,
and you.
It'll be a requirement. And David Loyce and Dr. Jody Carrington, who's so much fun and a real treasure in terms of knowledge about relationships and the inner workings. We're going to be doing a live question and answer panel, so people can come in and be part of all of that. It's going to be dynamite.
I think that's a fabulous thing, because what we do know is that, yes, we can cover content, but there are burning questions. And when a parent asks that, there's often other parents or educators who are asking the same question. And I just love that. My kind of contribution is a lot of how do we find calmness in chaos?
Yes.
Because you can do it. I mean, we touched on some things just today, you know, it's just nothing like a touch of kindness to make us feel kind of a little calmer. And I love it. And the team you've got gathered together, love, love, love. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be an awesome day. And of course, we would love to have you here in person. Last year at this time, you were here in Canada.
I was in Canada. Actually, I was on the Rocky Mountain here right now.
I remember you phoning from Lake Louise.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
Just like...
It blew my mind. I actually said to Steve, we're going to get out a little bottle of bubbles when we get to the same date of Lake Louise and go through all our photos, because it still was the peak experience, I believe, in nature that I've ever had in my entire life. And I have to do it again. Okay.
Well, I'm waiting. Arms ready and open. Thank you.
Open up those borders, please.
Beautiful. Yeah, let's do that. Thank you for the chat.
Stay safe, everyone.
Bye for now.